The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I say that it's a real pleasure to be speaking in support of this bill, and I want to open by congratulating the Minister, the Honourable Nick Smith, for the contents of this legislation, and say that I look forward to it progressing at good pace through the Select Committee back into this House and being passed. I think it's a very good initiative. I also want to acknowledge the outgoing Member of Parliament for Kaikoura, who is well known for his advocacy here and was certainly acknowledged by the Minister. I don't know what it is about a Thursday afternoon, but we seem to do this on quite a regular basis, and sometimes I feel a little tricked that I end up leaving the House congratulating the Minister of Conservation. I've just done it again. But he deserves it. And actually he also deserves congratulations for the Akaroa Marine Reserve, because it did languish not for 9 years of a Labour government, as he said, but actually 9 years of a previous National government before that. I recall the late Rod Donald, Mr Speaker, David Carter and I signing joint representation as the three Members of Parliament in that area, signing a joint letter of advocacy to the then National Minister. I'm just trying to recall who that would have been. It may have been the Honourable Nick Smith, actually, advocating in the early 90s for a marine reserve in the Akaroa Harbour, the Dan Rogers Marine Reserve. So let's not be petty about this, because the Honourable Nick Smith did sign it off as he's progressed this legislation and signed it off. But I also want to acknowledge a far bigger group of people, the local iwi, the local marine industry, the tourism operators and the environmental groups who have worked for 7 or 8 years to get this management plan progressed. And I totally agree with the other point the Minister made, and that is that we would all be better off if we didn't have long protracted litigation about marine protection, but rather go down a path where we can get agreement by all the different groups in the first place. A similar effort was proposed a decade or so again. It didn't really get progressed, and I hope that the next attempt achieves that. It seems to me that from the fishing industry, that would be a good thing. It would be very clear where there are no-take areas. They don't have to argue about it. They just know about it. For those of us who care passionately about having better marine protection, we wouldn't have to spend hours and lots of dollars in going through contentious and divisive court action in order to progress it. And local people would be able to have their say on what's important in protection in their community. So I think that's a very worthy aspiration, and I would certainly commit to Labour working alongside the government until September the 21st, when we won't have to, but I would invite the Honourable Nick Smith to give us the same reciprocity from his position in opposition on September the 21st, that we would be able to work together so that our communities will be less divided over marine protection and have the opportunity to come together. So, Mr Speaker, as I said at the beginning of my contribution, it's a real pleasure to be able to support this legislation. It is a good move. I still maintain that it's low-hanging fruit, because there's a number of quite substantive areas on which the Minister of Conservation has failed, and I want to just draw those briefly to the attention of the House in my concluding comments. The Minister acknowledged the Minister for Primary Industries, the Honourable Nathan Guy, and he has actually been an obstacle in some of the most urgently needed protection, and that is better protection for Maui's dolphins and Hector's dolphins. Just this week at the Local Government and Environment Committee, a very substantial petition signed by thousands and thousands and thousands of New Zealanders was presented and spoken to by Christine Rose from Auckland and Associate Professor Liz Slutin from Otago University. And they talked about how easy proper protection measures would be to put in place, and how the protection measures that the Honourable Nick Smith and Honourable Nathan Guy have recently introduced just don't cut the mustard. They don't go far enough. Well, you might say, Mr Speaker, why should that be of concern to the House? Well, actually, it must be of concern to the House because we have the responsibility for protection of the Māui's dolphin, and there are only 55 adult Māui's dolphins left. They all live in New Zealand waters. It is our responsibility to take the most precautionary approach possible to ensure the survival of that species. What bigger responsibility can there be in terms of marine mammals than to have the fate of a species in your hands? And that's the position we are in. And bullied by the fishing industry and the Minister for Primary Industry, the Minister for Conservation buckled and didn't hold the line on the precautionary approach and the best possible protection. I think that strategy needs relooking. I would be delighted to ask the Minister a patsy question about how great the Māui's dolphins' protections were if he introduced such protections, but he hasn't, and I think he lets not just the side down, but he lets New Zealand down. Our fishing industry is now under threat because internationally, with the increasing number of consumers who look at the product they're about to purchase and say, where was this made? How was it produced? Is it sustainable? You know, is the industry sustainable that produced it? We have more and more of our consumers overseas, the wealthier end of the market, high-value products, looking at our fish and saying, well, when this fish was caught, they may well have killed a Māui's dolphin. They may well have killed a dolphin that is critically endangered, and those people are saying, we're not going to buy that fish. We have the opportunity to support our fishing industry to move to sustainable practices and at the same time save our Māui's dolphins, to save the species. How could anybody lose from that proposal? Why didn't the Minister of Conservation take it up? Why did he get bullied by the Minister for Primary Industry and buckle when the literal future of a species is at stake? So I think that's something that we need to be concerned about, need to work harder on, and as I said, Mr Speaker, I'll be delighted to congratulate the Minister of Conservation when he does the right thing. The other area where the Minister of Conservation has significantly let the side down is when, through some exchange of concern, information, advice between the Minister, his office and the Department of Conservation, the substantial submission prepared by the Department of Conservation, raising concerns about the one nutrient model which is proposed in the Tukituki plan change to progress the Ruataniwha Dam. That substantive submission from the Department of Conservation just vanished. Instead of a well-researched, properly scientifically based submission raising genuine concerns with the Board of Inquiry about this one nutrient model, it's a model that says the level of nitrates in the Tukituki River won't be of concern. We'll only worry about the phosphorus level. It's brand new, it's unique, it runs the risk of turning the Tukituki River toxic, and yet the Minister of Conservation, through that exchange with his department, had the submission withdrawn. So those concerns had to be raised by NGOs, by Fish and Game, by Forest and Bird, by other local community groups who are concerned about this brand new model being tested in Hawke's Bay and running the risk of turning the Tukituki River toxic. So I think that's a very big black mark on the register of issues against the Minister of Conservation. I don't think that submission should have been withdrawn. It was an important one to make. It's at the heart of the advocacy role of the Department of Conservation, which has been not just watered down, but actually drowned and then thrown out the baby with the bathwater by this government. The current minister is certainly a step up on his predecessor in terms of being passionate and caring about conservation issues. But that was the worst example of where the department was needed and had the responsibility for putting that submission to the Board of Inquiry, and that substantive submission just went in the bucket. So, Mr Speaker, just in conclusion, I want to again congratulate the Minister for bringing this legislation forward. It's a good bill, and it's one that we will be supporting hopefully through all stages, unless something goes off the rails in the meantime, and I can't imagine it would. I want to again acknowledge the local people who have worked so hard on preparing Te Kurawai, which was the strategy document that led to this for many, many years, worked constructively hard with passion and with genuine understanding of the local area, and it's a great pleasure to be able to support this legislation on that basis.
Mr Speaker.
I recognise the honourable member, Nikki Wagner.
Thank you very